Well, thank you.
from the Wasatch Group is here. Dell Loy, you are in the middle of doing something so incredible and so humanitarian. I don't even know another word for it other than that. With what you've got going on in Ukraine, tell us about it. I think the first time a lot of us probably heard about it, but maybe a year and a half ago.
Yes.
That you were funding housing for Ukrainians. Tell us what you're doing.
Before that, it goes back to when I was 18. I read the book by Leon Uris, Exodus. And I read in the book where 740 Jews escaping Hitler in 1939 arrived at America's shores in New York. And we were so bigoted and racist that we did not allow them to enter America. They were forced to go back to Europe, and most of them died in concentration camps. And that had a profound effect on me, that I thought if that had ever happened in my life, I would not have stood back and watched. I would have protected the innocent that can't protect themselves. And through my 50 years since then, I have not seen a lot of great wars. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. And then when Russia invaded democratic Ukraine, a new republic formed from the fall of the Soviet Union, and I studied it profoundly, almost 5 hours a day. I knew that I had to do something, and I knew I was too old at 70 to carry a machine gun, or I would have gone like Ernest Hemingway to fight in Spain.
Yeah.
So I said, what can I do? And my good friend David Levitt, who's here from Utah County, had been in Ukraine for 17 years, helping reform the judicial system from a Soviet-style judicial system to a Western that had evidence-based, how we look at having our trials not be politically influenced and biased, and he was changing that culture through the Levitt Institute. So I called him, and he said, I can go to Ukraine with you. And I said, great. I've never been to Ukraine. And his wife and my wife and I, we went to Ukraine, met with the ex-president's wife, and she traveled with us, Yushchenko. And I set the goal to help 600 families. I wanted to help them because I'd watched 6 million people being dislocated from their homes in the east and the south by the Russian invasion, and ending up in Poland and in schools. Classrooms would hold 12 people with blankets, pillows, and no kitchens, student bathrooms, no showers. I mean, it was horrible what they were enduring. And most of all, they had no money. I mean, you had to leave your work, you had to leave your house, and you had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we committed to finding 600 families we could give $400 a month to over a year, 3.5 million. And we went to Ukraine and started visiting refugee centers for the next 10 days. So we formed what we call Dignity Dollars. And this is to restore the dignity of people that had them brutally taken away from by this totalitarian attack on Ukraine. And I spent a year doing that, looking at what Ukraine really needed. And I came up with 3 conclusions. Their housing is being destroyed at a phenomenal rate. And at the early invasion, 2,600 homes were destroyed in north of Kiev, Bucha, Irpin, Makati, Chernihiv. And I visited these when I was with David Levitt. I was in Bucha 3 weeks after the Russians were pushed out. I was in a city called Slobodo with 92 people, and they'd only been gone 2 weeks. I was the first foreigner to come after the Russians were expelled. I counted 22 armored vehicles blown up. I picked up hand grenades, shells. The guys with me were always afraid I'd walk onto a mine. And I met 92 people, most of them babushkas, because the young families had to leave. The young girls would have been raped, so the only ones that stayed. And interesting, the Russians had a respect for the babushkas because they would lecture them, and they were the only ones that wouldn't get killed.
Yeah.
So you'd find villages full of the elderly that were surviving on $61 a month pensions. And I made a commitment that I'm going to help housing, food, and education along with the Dignity Dollars program. So the Dignity Dollars is now in its 3rd year, entering the 3rd year, and we give $200 a month now to 800 families. Then we came and I met a great Ukrainian woman who had moved to Idaho, Svetlana Miller, who had formed a charity, To Ukraine with Love, that was building modular homes. And the very day that I got her phone call, so this could be, for those that believe in inspired moments and God reaching down, I called her the very day she closed her housing effort because she'd run out of money, February of 2023. And she was on her way to a food kitchen in Kharkiv, where she fed people 20 miles from the front line who had no gas, electricity, and water. She was feeding 1,000 people twice a day. And so while she couldn't do the housing, she was committed to doing the feeding. I called her. We had a deep conversation. I understood modular housing. When I was a young man in Logan, Utah, I built 1,200 modular homes in my 20s. So I understood how it worked. And she connected me with the builder. We talked about it. And that day I committed to building 20 homes immediately to bring the crews back that had been fired the day before.
Yeah.
So they all came back. And we scaled that over 3 months into 50 homes a month. And by November, we'd built 500 homes. So we were able to put 500 people back in homes. Their homes were destroyed. We cleared the lot where the home was destroyed, built the modular home there, and moved them in. It took us from the day we laid the home on the floor to the day they moved in 9 days.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I can tell you that Rome wasn't built in a day, but nobody hired me to be the contractor. I've always built things quickly and efficiently, and I worked with this builder, Pablo, who's a Mormon bishop in Bucha. He had to help bury 20 people while he was there from the attacks, and he's a remarkable man, 42 years old, and he's strictly dedicated to service, a total inspiration. He should be hugely honored, within the Mormon church, because this is a true hero that with humility dedicates his life to employees, and he ramped from 30 employees to 500, and he buys all his material in Ukraine and the manufacturing. So we think between he and Sergey, another contractor I brought to the United States, taught him what we wanted to do, and he scaled to 500 employees. So over the last year, we've had 1,000 Ukrainians working every day on housing.
Yeah.
And as of yesterday, we accomplished 1,200 homes.
That's amazing.
I like I say, the need is so great. And today I brought some things that this morning I start every morning at 6 o'clock. I'm 71. I've never worked as many hours in a day as I am at 71 ever. So I do Ukraine from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and we do construction meetings, vetting of people, employee issues, programs. And today I was able to meet, I'll let you look at this one and comment, but we were able to vet 6 families that have 8 to 12 kids and move them into what we call the orphan homes because they were designed for orphans. Half of these are adopted children. The families who are generous families had 4 kids of their own and adopted 6.
Yeah.
And we now have given them a home with the parents and then 4 to 5 bedrooms. And we call it the Orphan Village. We got to come up with a better name. But it's right across from the new school that we'll be building. And that's what I really want to focus on, where I hope to find some great support to educate kids.
Yeah.
So I've been talking a long time because I have a lot to say, but I'll stop.
No,
for a
yeah.
minute.
Dell Loy, what have you learned about this conflict? And, the longer it goes on, it seems the more and more political support kind of lessens. Actually, the less political support it gets.
Well, the sad part is if we truly support democracy in the world and our own help, Russia is an expansionist nation and has been for the last 200 years. Catherine the Great. I'm a huge student of history and what Russia really is. Not what we want to believe it is, but what it really is.
Mm-hmm.
We had colonial empires in the past, England, France, Britain. They were all colonial through the world. Russia is a colonial empire at 2 levels. One, if you study its history of expansion, why it's the largest country in the world, spanning 9 time zones. There are about 8 movements of colonialization that took over most of the Mongol areas. They were ruled by the Mongols for 400 years, and they kind of recaptured those one by one.
Yeah.
And now they've done Africa. I mean, and they did that through their subvert military. They have threatened Europe. You know, they wouldn't have given up Eastern Europe, you know, except they ran out of money in 91 because Ronald Reagan broke them.
Yeah.
He physically forced them into a spending match they couldn't match, and their economy crushed, which is going on now. Their economy will crush.
Yeah.
If we have the courage to continue forward, they will not be able to economically support this war effort for more than a year. They've got a year, but after that, everything I study says they will break. Now, the need is greater today than it was at any point, not even at the invasion of the beginning. But now Russia, coming to Putin's election in March, has put more resources into Ukraine that they've saved up. They're attacking on 5 fronts. Over 200 Ukrainian men are dying every day, and probably more. Now, the reason they're dying is a lack of artillery and a lack of long-range military equipment that when they can shoot ATACMS, it's amazing what they get done.
Yeah.
When they can shoot the HIMARS, it's amazing. They now have missiles that have taken out 9 major Russian aircrafts in the last 7 days. So it's there, but they're out.
Yeah.
And Europe was not prepared. To their mistake, they thought the world was going to enter a peaceful period, and it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're ramping up quickly. They've recognized the risk. They've committed still 2.5 times more than America, 2.5 times. So if we think we're carrying the burden, we're not. Europe, at our very same population, is carrying twice as much. And the ability to not get the ammunition and that aid package done has literally driven me into depression. I talked to every congressman. My own congressman, Blake Moore, and I are on a very first-name textual basis every day because I said I'm looking for a couple of courageous Republican congressmen that understand what freedom and this wonderful people deserve, because Russia, if they say we'll settle, I talked to 1,000 people that lived in the occupied area personally. I've been to Ukraine 3 times. Every morning I speak with people on Zoom and have it translated. They are a genocide. So when we say we care for life and embryos and we want a genocide, and Tucker Carlson says that we should go give Putin what he wants and genocide, all those people in the occupied country, the occupied area, that's 10 million people Putin will kill or displace. So no Republican can say they care about life when they're relegating these people to death. And we can stop it. And for 4 months, we have not had the courage to go forward with an arms package, not an American man. Nobody's died. And we are so, I can't put it in words because I cry. I literally cry to think that we would be that, I can't think of another word other than evil, that we want to relegate this wonderful democratic country to Putin's totalitarian genocide.
Yeah.
And we won't have 2 courageous Republican congressmen step forward and break the deadlock and vote the aid that Romney, brilliant. His speech put me in tears. He said, I can believe in America. Our other senator, whose name shall never be mentioned, is still there to support Putin. And that horrifies me that I live in a state that a senator supports Putin. He voted for Putin when they asked the arms deal. Now, you guys should be embarrassed that he comes from Utah County. So he doesn't come from Salt Lake County. He comes from Utah County. Somebody should be calling him every day and saying, we do not support Putin. Now, I don't have opinions. So my wife told me to be careful because I tend to be a little outspoken, and I'm sorry about that. But when I feel something, I feel it very profoundly.
No, it's great.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking of our senior senator, I won't say his name.
His name shall never be mentioned.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you get the sense for like why he's opposing it? Do you really think it's as blatant as like, hey, he supports Putin? Or
I
do you
think that there is
it's-
a Putin wing of the Republican Party, meaning that they love dictatorship. They don't honor democracy. They pay lip service, but they love Hungary, who's a dictator. They love Putin. They love Xi. They even compliment North Korea. So there is a group in the Republican Party that sees totalitarian form of government better, meaning democracy's messy and it includes people. Totalitarians exclude people and they give certain power groups more power. And he is definitely part of that. I want power to the groups that support me, kind of fundamentalist Christians, people that kind of have a warped view of Christianity to me. Christianity is giving. I simply, when people ask me, why did I go to Ukraine? I said, it's Luke 10. I memorize this, but I won't give you a biblical reading. But when some erudite Jewish leaders tried to trap Christ in, how do you find salvation? And he said, love your brother as thyself. And then, who's my brother? And then he gave the parable of the Good Samaritan. And it was the perfect statement. The self-righteous Jewish leadership, the Levites, walked by the wounded man in the road. But the poor Samaritan, the lowest in Jewish society, who, had to get to his job. He had to earn a living. And he stopped on the road, took his wine and oil and helped the man's wounds, then loaded him on his donkey and took him to the inn. And it's really important what he said here. It wasn't that he just did a good act. He said, will you take care of this man? And he paid him, but when I return, I will pay you whatever it takes. And that has been my mantra. I have two mantras because I'm a questionable, devout Christian, but I do believe two things and say I know. It's the parable of the Good Samaritan and the fishes and the loaves. My entire life, if I give 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, I have never once not had more returned. So giving is the easiest thing I do in my life, the easiest thing, because it consistently, I receive so much more. But when we come back to that Good Samaritan, that is my thing. I can't give you a can of beans. I have to care for you until you don't need my care. And that's why the last thing is I shifted to building villages. Now, I've spent my entire 40 years building homes, apartment communities here in Utah County. We probably have 5. In all of the Salt Lake area, we own 37. I'm proud to say a lot of them are workforce housing for people that earn between $13 and $21 an hour that need housing. And I try to build one of those workforce housing projects every year. I built 12 senior projects for people that have low income. So I take more pride in helping those that don't have the wealth that we need to support in our society. But I've been building villages my whole life. Now I'm building villages in Ukraine. And if you get a minute, this is the big initiative that I've devoted my life to at this point.
That's so cool. You're obviously a student of history and you've been deeply involved in the Ukrainian thing. And we're talking high level with politicians and everything you're doing. Of all the weird stuff that's happened the last 4 years, this is one of the weirder things, an actual artillery-based war with trenches in Europe, something I never thought I would see again. And you have an actual chance to bloodlet Russians, and all you have to do is send over the artillery and some better equipment, and they'll do it for you. Why is the American public not like all in on this?
I study every night because I don't sleep a lot. I only need 5 hours. So from 11 to 1 o'clock, I go through all of the war bloggers that bring the statistics of the equipment destroyed in Russia, the battles. I can tell you the 5 frontline battles to a gnat's eyebrow. Andriivka, I followed closely, Soledar, Bakhmut. I have a flag hanging in my office signed by the soldiers in Bakhmut, another one from Soledar, and the ones from Andriivka come this week. So, I know soldiers fighting in each of these villages, and last week, 2 of those soldiers that's families live in these villages were killed. So, meaning the war is very, very close to me. It's not a distant thing. It's not an observation. I cry with the people when their husbands die. And so when I see the indifference to their lives, and then I hear that I care about an embryo in Alabama, I just look, who are these sick people that they could care less about live human beings that are suffering every day, and a scientific embryo they go to war for. Somebody's got to wake me up and teach me what's going on in human compassion, and do we care for life, or do we care for something I don't understand? So
Yeah.
somebody's got to educate me, because it makes zero sense to me what's going on.
How do you think it ends? And I'm sure you watched Tucker's interview with Putin, and I don't fully understand what Putin's argument is after watching that. It sounded like this kind of like crazy history lesson, almost like they're entitled to some of this land or something like that. But it did seem like they got to like and maybe he's just lying, or who knows, he's Vladimir Putin, but it did seem like he's like, hey, we could probably negotiate a peace right now if somebody called me. Do you think that's true?
It's not true. The question is he has captured 18% of Ukraine, through this initiative. Ukraine has won back about 12% of the initial capture. But I know the people living there. If you sat and listened, most of the people that I met today escaped from Crimea, from Zaporizhia, from Soledar, from that. These are people that escaped. And the harrowing stories of their escape would scare you. Mm-hmm. They were shot at, they dodged bullets to get out of occupied Ukraine, to get there. And then when you hear their stories of the FSB vetting every village and finding anyone with a pro-Ukrainian symbol or a prior ATO military service disappearing. So to think that there is anything to negotiate, it is a genocide. And anyone who thinks, oh, this is a war where they both battled to exhaustion, and then we let 10 million people die that were captured by Putin. He will move them out, he will move Russians in, and he will change the demographic. That's exactly what they did in Crimea. They let the Donbass regular people die. So when they came in under that false revolution in 2014, you go back to the Donbass, the people that live there in Ukraine, Donbass, that Russia took over, most of their soldiers are dead. They've done nothing to rebuild it. They're waiting till they step back, and they'll just populate it with Russians. So it is a genocide, like something in a scientific movie where the aliens land, kill the existing people, and take over the land.
Yeah.
So when you think that there is any negotiated peace to stop the killing, Zelensky knows there isn't. The people I talk to and soldiers know they've been fighting some since 2014 because they know there is no alternative. Peace with Putin is genocide for the people they leave behind. Be like the American military saying, hey, we trust the Russians who captured those 10 Marines. They'll be okay. We'll leave them and leave them behind. No Ukrainian believes that. And why we would think that we can negotiate a peace to save lives, that's a lie. You would genocide 10 million people that have been captured. So when everyone says the Republicans want to negotiate a peace and then we can go about controlling embryos, I go, who are these people? How can they be so illiterate as to world history and who Putin is? Every city he's gone into, they said they were liberating it. It is decimated. In the Donbass, Andriivka, I mean, there's nothing. 35,000 people, nothing. Bakhmut, 70,000, nothing. I have people living there, 25 from Bakhmut, and they show me pretty flowered boulevards and the wonderful life they have, and then how they had to escape. They lived there under shelling for a long time, finally had to pull out, lived in hostels and UN shelters where the 20 families shared a kitchen and showered in a time zone and lived behind a blanket drape. I mean, they've endured huge amounts, having to leave their homes where they were successful people, just like you and I. You would not recognize the difference. When I'm with them, I feel like they could be me, I could be them. Mm-hmm. I once had a home in a village, Logan, in my mind. They destroyed 10 Logans completely. And so here I am in Logan, beautiful Logan, and one day I go back and every house is blown up in Logan and no one lives there. That's Russian liberation. And so, no, this war, we have to be 100% committed. And I have committed personally, by the end of next year, $150 million of my own funding. Now, I'm not saying that for braggadocio. I want people to know democracy and freedom and a lack of a genocide, I want to be the hallmark of my life, that I want to put an exclamation point on a life that I've lived 71 years. I expect to live 12 more. I want to get to 83. But I want to put an exclamation point. I cared for people that suffered a genocide by a dictator, and I did not turn my back. I did not turn my back. I did not rationalize it away. I looked it square in the eye and said, I will do whatever it takes. And I have an ask here today, so when you get to that, I do need some help to build a school. And I want to talk about that school when you guys have time.
Tell us, please.
Now's the time.
I'm dominating this conversation
No,
because I'm
this
a
is
little
why
fired
you're
up.
here. This is fantastic. Yeah.
Well, as we build a village, and in my entire life, you'll be hard-pressed to look around and see my name on anything. I always said if I needed my name on something, what did I lack doing the right thing? That I needed you to know that I did it. So I've never put my name on it. You know, my wife, I've said, you can do it, my mother, others, but I don't want my name on anything. However, the first thing I put my name on is called Hansen Village in Borodishivsk, or in southern Kiev. And I bought 24 acres and I built a village. And 25 of these people move into that village Friday. And I finished 2 phases. I'll finish the 3rd phase in May, and I'll finish the 4th phase in October. And 520 families will live in that village, 3,000 people. And it's got its own athletic center. It's got a swimming pool, basketball courts. But across from it, I have the land to build a 720 student school. Now, you're not even going to believe this, but Putin targeted schools in Ukraine. That was his biggest target. 1,200 schools have been damaged or destroyed. Half the population is online. They don't have the association of going to a school and being in a playground. And they can't go to schools without bomb shelters. So we are designing a school that will cost $10 million for 720 kids, single session. But likely it'll be a double session school, meaning one group would start at 6 in the morning and go till noon. Another one would start at 12:30 and go till 6:30 because the lack of classrooms and that. But we are building a bomb shelter in that could withstand a very heavy 500-pound bomb. So if Putin targeted that school, which I think he would, because that's the evil that this man is, that group of students could survive. And so I'm going to make sure that this school is survival, like the old nuclear bomb shelters I had as a kid. This one would survive. But it would be K through 12, and it would have an auditorium, a basketball gym, a cafeteria, library, and the community would use that at night. So it doubles as a school, and that's for the village. But I'm now going to do fundraising in large amounts. Svetlana continues to fundraise for the Modular program and the food. I've shifted mine to meeting literally large humanitarian countries like Japan, Denmark, there. But I'd like to see if in America, I hope this touches someone that says, I would like to help 700 students regain an education, if not 1,400. And I plan to start the school in construction. All the engineering done will be in June, and I want it ready for September of 25. So we will be building at a remarkably rapid clip to build this school and have it ready for the students to enter in September of 2025. So I look forward to anyone. Our new website, because I haven't solicited any donations till now outside of the Wasatch companies. And the Wasatch companies have now donated $8 million on top of what I've donated to help house people, feed people, and build in one of the villages. I've taken the full burden of the Hansen village 100% and the Chudo village, which you'll love to hear about. But what I'm here for is to ask people, on Friday we will have a website called HUM, Hansen Ukrainian Mission, and it's 3 initials, capital H, capital U, capital M, not org. I can't remember. They just told me
put
today.
it in the show notes.
If you could do that. Yeah. Mary Van Mindy knows it. She told me. But they're literally working on that website to show donors the projects, large humanitarian groups. And we'll be meeting with the U.S. Embassy, and they're going to help us contact groups. But I plan to raise $90 million to build the rest of these villages. Thursday night, I met with the city council in Tarasivka, and I had 25 deputies there, and they argue a lot, kind of like in America. Mm-hmm. But they voted 25-0 in favor of giving me a 50-year lease on 22 acres that was slated to be a cemetery, not currently, but would be. And I get to build 650 homes and an indoor soccer facility, which I know how to build those.
Yeah. You've got a little bit of experience with
in that one.
So you're covering all the bases, right? You're hitting the lawmakers and grinding that axe.
If I could do anything from here, if you just call your congressman and say, support aid to Ukraine, we're using our old missiles. We're actually creating a military industrial thing, renewing with newer technology. Ukraine's not getting our best technology. They're getting our old F-16s. They're getting our old munitions that actually age out.
Yep.
And literally, when people say that investment think of the money we spent to weaken the Soviet Union. Think of the money we spend on defense in NATO and our military to protect against Russia, when we literally, by simply making these military donations, get it for free. It is the best deal, if you're crass, America could ever have. And yet, for some reason, our stupidity knows no end.
Yeah, the Cold Warriors of the 80s would just be
Turn it in
salivating right now.
I mean, they're looking at this and thinking, how did America become as stupid as Marjorie Greene? How did they do that? When I listen to her, I think, how did we get so stupid that we would believe someone like Marjorie Greene? And yet a large number of Americans believe that. When she says, no, Ukraine should die. We should let Putin do whatever he wants. And she actually says it. And she thinks they're evil, this democratic people. And I've met 10,000 of them personally. And I listen and I think, where did this witch of Georgia come from? She has no knowledge. She is, in my mind, evil. And America's bought her evil. The internet must be some powerful tool that I don't understand, because I don't use it like most people do. I don't message. I don't do any of that. And
you're smart.
Well, what I like to do is study well thought out thinkers. I try to find some great thinkers and follow them. And, I want people that, I'm reading the book on how to think. It's an amazing book, that teaches us why we all are not independent thinkers. No one can be. All of our thinking subject to our social context.
Yeah.
All of it. So I'm not independent. I just want to pick better thinkers that I get to listen to.
How do you think about like this whole, hey, let's make a commitment that Ukraine never joins NATO and this will all be over?
Foolish, because Russia will never stop. They never have. Meaning, in 91, we said, give them all your nuclear missiles. We, America and Britain, signed a pact. We'll protect you. They gave up their nuclear missiles, gave them to Russia. And what happened? They had their president poisoned, who we brought to America. I met with him. He's a dear friend. He donated 40 apple trees, and we talk. I visit him every time I go to Ukraine, Yushchenko. And they poisoned him. They tried to have their puppet set up. When they couldn't get their puppet, and he escaped the Kiev revolution downtown in the Maidan, and they shot 100 people. 2 of the people that live in our village are mothers of the kids that were shot in the Maidan. And they told me the story of their sons that stood up to Yanukovych, who the minute he shot them, he fled to Russia. I've toured his palace. When you talk of Putin's palaces and Saddam Hussein's, in Ukraine, it's now a public park to walk through his gold-plated palaces. Yushchenko, that was Russia's puppet. So meaning this has gone on since 91, Russia trying to control Ukraine and not call it a real country. In 2014, they fully invaded it falsely, took Crimea, Donbass, Luhansk, and now they came back when they thought they could overtake Kiev in 3 days and own Ukraine. They will never stop. This goes on from Soviet times, the Holodomor, when they starved to death 5 million Ukrainians under Stalin. I visited that monument. I've read histories of it. They have never stopped trying to subjugate Ukraine, and they won't. They're an imperial empire, see themselves as that, and will continue. And they will always look for a weakness. Is it going to be not the Balkans, but the 3 countries, Luxembourg,
Estonia,
Latvia.
Yeah.
They're right there because they claim 30% of their population is Russian speaking because they were friendly through the Soviet era. Russia will claim the right to protect Russian speakers and conquer those little countries. And they're not Ukraine. They don't have the population. They have to have NATO. NATO, we need to be fully committed to NATO. It's the best investment we've got. That falsehood that they're not carrying their weight is an absolute falsehood. I have studied all the numbers. And when it comes to NATO itself, it's $2.4 billion. That's just the dues. That's the dues. And the four top countries, America is equal to Germany, England, France. We all pay the same. America's no great hero here. But then there's a lot of small countries that really don't have a lot. Bulgaria, Moldova. And when I hear people beating up on these and saying, I'm going to call Russia up and tell him to blow you up because you're poor, how do you think I feel about that?
Yeah.
Here is a great defense treaty that's kept the peace for 70 years. It will keep the peace in the future. It's not an aggressive alliance. And yet some of the poorer members struggle to make their dues.
Yeah.
You know, and that we would tell Putin, do whatever the hell you want to them because they're poor. I don't know how that impacts you people, but it just scares me that we could have that attitude towards poor countries in the world. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yet somebody's got to wake me up one day and say, why do so many Utahns believe we should allow poor countries to be dominated by Putin and believe it and follow it and cheerlead it?
No.
I'll never get it.
And there's still millions, they're old, but there's still millions of people in every country we've talked about that are alive in World War II.
Yep.
And this playbook is not dissimilar to a lot of what happened
World War I, World War II, you can walk through it.
not that long
I'll
ago.
tell you a great movie. Will you guys call me when you finish it? It's on Netflix called Einstein. And study not Einstein, the nuclear bomb, but listen to how Hitler gained power through the 30s
Yep.
and how Einstein viewed that. And the people that followed Hitler into a dictatorship and into this demise of democracy in Germany, Einstein referred to them as the flotsam of society that then gather around a powerful leader. And when I watch the January 6th riots, I look at the flotsam that showed up in America and now dominate, that they went from the flotsam to the powerful brown shirts, Kristallnacht, the Nazi party, and eventually a world war. And you can't help but see the parallels of how a very motivated far-right movement of people that have very little direction in their life, but they have really radical beliefs, can focus around a leader, and democracy is not safe. I just was stunned, and Einstein, in the kindest words, described it. And yet he lost everything in Germany, you know, meaning, and yet his knowledge saved the world from Germany. And like he said, had I known Germany could not have completed a bomb before the war, I would never have done what I did. But he was fully convinced they had the ability to do that, and that would demise the whole world to a nuclear bomb in Germany. But it was one of the greatest movies I've ever watched, but it reminded me the repeat of history, how we got into World War I, how we got into World War II. We're on a path, and it's not gray. And I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I cry a lot, but I hope that helps. I'm going to put up 35 billboards, so when you see them in Utah County, that asking for support for Ukraine. So Wednesday, you're going to see billboards in Orem that ask for Ukraine support. And I'm hoping just that people, a meeting like this can see, I mean, half the world will write me evil letters for saying this because somehow I don't support the Orange Jesus or something. But I can't. How can I and care for these people and literally support a policy that would lead to their genocide? It cannot be done. I will not do it. And yet the internet will send me all kinds of messages why the Ukrainians deserve to die. We don't support them. We should be blocking poor Venezuelans from coming here instead. You know, we should be protecting everything that's ours and becoming richer and more greedy ourselves. And I just can't buy that message.
Yeah.
That I want to share my wealth. I do not want wealth for wealth's sake. I want to share it.
Yeah.
And most people that I hear just want to accumulate it for themselves and keep it away from others. And that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Share it.
Yeah.
I assume Orange Jesus is Trump.
I don't know that. My wife, if I said that, she would kill me. But I've heard that mentioned, and he seems to be the orange Jesus to a lot of evangelicals. So,
how do you, like, with the presidential election coming up? I mean, how do we fix this? I mean,
well,
I don't
the
see
dilemma
how
for
Ukraine
me,
aid
the dilemma for me is, I've been a lifelong Republican. We've had great governors here. I'm a great friend of Mike Leavitt, Governor Herbert, Governor Cox. I've just been so proud of Utah's governor leadership. We've had a little far right in our Senate, but they've done good things, meaning I honor that we've not marched in the past to the radical right Republicans, the MAGA. The dilemma is that somehow we're being co-opted into the MAGA movement. And you look at Romney, he gave one of the most beautiful speeches I've ever seen on the Senate floor when they passed aid to Ukraine. If you haven't seen it, it's artistic, it's beautiful, it defends democracy, and it calls us to our higher purpose. But if you haven't watched it, look it up on the internet, watch Romney's speech when they passed 74-28, and our senior senator said no, Ukrainians should be relegated to death. He voted against it. Romney was articulately in favor. And so here in Utah, we have one blessing and one stain. But now it's blocked by Johnson in the House. And I talked to the House members, all four of them. Blake Moore in particular, he's getting tired of my texts.
Well, he's in leadership now.
I know. That's why I'm driving it home, that I said, where can I find four courageous Republicans that stand for an anti-genocide in Ukraine? Where can I find them? Can't we help Taiwan? Can't we help Israel? Can't we help Ukraine? Why is it that building a barbed wire fence and drowning Venezuelans more important than helping our allies? Now, I believe we should control the border, but I don't think we should kill people to control the border and drown them in the river. I think we should be forthright, carry out things. I thought the thing that they passed should have gone into effect, but obviously it didn't, because that would take away an issue from, what was that guy you called him, the Orange Jesus? Orange Jesus. We soon will have a theocratic president and not a Democrat. We'll have a theocracy with our own special form of blonde orange Jesus. So, I mean, I can't believe that we could be seduced by his rhetoric. I just don't know how. But,
well, it does seem like he's on track to win again.
Yeah, he's
for sure.
Yeah. And so what I had to do this year is I finally had to register and become a Democrat. So after 50 years of Republican, I am now a full-fledged Democrat and doing everything I can to elect Democrats. How else can I save America? If the Republican Party is being purged, calling them rhinos, of everyone with a moderate sense and a belief of working together, and they are going through the purge of the party to get rid of anyone who speaks out moderate and speaks of America's working together, trying to find better solutions to poverty, to the border, to voting ballots, to helping anything that's positive in government. You need a moderate group in the middle that comes together. The Republican Party is purging any moderates and only wanting a do-nothing, save the embryos, kill the Venezuelans Congress. And I can't be part of that. I would feel like I joined in Germany in 1933, the Nazi Party. So I have had to formally step out of being a Republican, and I'm now a Democrat, and a proud Democrat.
You know, it is interesting in Utah that Mitt Romney probably wouldn't win re-election were he running.
I know.
Right.
Scares
like that like Mitt Romney.
Scares you.
Like that is, he is our, kind of formidable politician for that name. And like, I do think he would lose if he
would.
Ran
I read his book, Reckoning, and it's so fun to see him freed from seeking re-election in Utah that he doesn't have to pander to the MAGA hateful side of the party. But I won't either.
Yeah.
I won't stay there and say that, trying to walk a fine line, because I want my job and I want notoriety. I don't care. I care to do the right thing, and that's what Romney said in his book, Reckoning. It's more important to do the right thing, even though we're a flawed human being. Romney states his flaws. I clearly have flaws. Some people would say I'm not the best boss to work for, and others would say I am. To them, I'm flawed, and others I'm not. But if we don't have the courage to go forward with our flaws and take a principled stance, we're intimidated by those that would belittle us and marginalize us so that we can't have a moral compass. And I think that people are so afraid of the MAGA movement that 23 Republicans, 5 in leadership that were considered moderate consensus builders, are all leaving. So Trump is getting his way of building his own MAGA Nazi type party that is purging everyone who doesn't march to your step. And he's promised it in numerous statements. I will purge them. I will eliminate them. I will belittle them. I will do everything I can if you don't join my movement. And isn't that scary? In an America where we teach tolerance and acceptance of each other and acceptance of a majority opinion, which we do through the ballot box, we now have a party that says no. Totalitarianism is better than democracy and cooperation. Strictly, we will be louder, noisier, and meaner, and we will take power, whether you give it to us or not. And that's stunning. That is the America that we're living in, and we sometimes don't see it that clearly. It seems a little muddy. For me, you can tell it's not very muddy anymore. Yeah. I have to take a principled stand, as Senator Romney has, against the false Christian piety of those that think they're destroying America for some theology or theocracy that they think would be better. And that's what they're preaching. The evangelicals is a theocracy in America. Mike Johnson, he's not unclear. They're not preaching democracy. They're preaching a dictatorial theocracy ruled by righteous Christians. Mm-hmm. And I think some Utahns have bought into that righteous Christian rhetoric. And it's sad, because I do believe Mormons are an amazing people that have resisted hatefulness towards that. We all went on missions and served people and came to love it. I came to love the Spaniards, my kids Chilenos, Brazilians. We all talk of how much we learned to love these people, but once we become Utah Republicans, we hate them. And I don't get it. Or at least we're dialectic. I mean, we have a split personality, to say the least.
Yeah.
You know, that would be the best way to say that they can hold two opposing beliefs and follow it. And cognitive dissonance, I think they call it. Yeah. Utah is loaded with cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
My wife is not going to like this talk.
You're doing great.
No, I thought I should have been more moderate, but I don't know how to plead that we can find our democratic love for each other.
Yeah.
I want to love my MAGA brethren, but they need to be tolerant. Mm-hmm. They need to not disparage everyone and call names and say evil things about each other. How can we get them to stop that?
That's my question to you. Let's just assume, let's play the trivia game here and forecast it. If he wins in November, he'll become president again in January. Do you have any hope that this was all just for politics? And
no, not at all.
You don't think it'll change in a year from now?
Not at all. I mean, not at all. That's what he believes, meaning he's a vengeful person. He will carry out vengeance. He's been drugged through the courts in a way that his anger is seething, and he will pay vengeance on our judicial system in a way that none of us could imagine. I think it's so dangerous that I can't even describe it. I just think we're sleepwalking into a nightmare, and we don't know it. I mean, I would rather have Biden being old and having great advisors. I look at the people that work with him, and he's got Jake Sullivan. I mean, I'm very impressed with the people that serve. Trump changed him out every hour, loved him, hated him, loved him, hated him, hated him, loved him. You know, I mean, I don't know what he thought, but he never had a really coherent group that governed America. We now have a good group governing America, and if I have a principled leader, then I'm okay. He can be old. I'm getting old. I like you guys to love me when I'm old, but I won't be as good as I was. He isn't. He won't be. But if he's got principles, I don't care. Trump's only 4 years younger and slurs his speech and says more crazy crap than I can imagine. And people just says, it's like our old uncle that's crazy, but we love him. And Biden, if he slurs one word, they go, look at this guy. He can't think. Wow, you put the two of them up there, and Trump makes 20-1 gaffes compared to Biden. But we don't have a great choice. We should have a better choice. I could have hung in with the Republicans if the moderates like Nikki Haley could have come to there. She's a little far right for me, but she has Ukraine and the world stage clear. But again, the cult of MAGA is too big to overcome. And my worry is that we will march into a Nazi future, totalitarian theocracy, if we don't stand tall right now at this moment and oppose that totalitarian theocracy that the far right is pushing.
So your aim is to live 12 more years. Hopefully it's
12.
a lot
That's
more.
what the Surgeon General says, and I believed him on COVID, and I believe him that that's my average likelihood.
You're going to live longer than that.
I don't know. I got diabetes, I got heart problems, and I only sleep about 5 hours a night anymore, so I'm not getting enough. But what is truly important to me that I live every minute of that purposefully. So anyone who knows me is, I don't understand the concept of retirement. I have no idea what that means. I'm doing what I love. I love working with the Wasatch people. They're taking more and more of the responsibility. We have a great set of companies that are doing amazingly good things in the community. Nuclear medicine at Nusano. We will be the next generation of cancer treatments. We're at the forefront. Wasatch owns 27% of that company. We're building a $160 million factory there in West Valley that will open and change cancer treatment. There's a drug, and I'll say it wrong, Lucidium, that is now the miracle drug for treating prostate cancer. We will be the majority supplier of that, starting in St. Louis this year and then moving to the Utah factory in next summer. But that is a drug that you mix with a molecule inserted in the prostate, and that little nuclear reactor that lasts 5 to 7 days attaches to the cancer molecule and destroys it with no surgery and no after effects. So it is now the treatment of state, but we don't have enough luthium, and that's what we're going to make in Utah. We will be the largest world's manufacturer of nuclear isotopes, and the factory is planning to build 13 of those isotopes today.
Wow.
Give an example, because we're getting them off accelerons and nuclear reactors, and it takes sometimes a year to schedule the production, and it's very slow, and it wasn't designed. We have a patented ion gun that shoots 50,000 ions a second at targets that then split every so often an isotope. I mean, it's kind of like 1 in 1,000 shots make an isotope, so you shoot 1,000 shots and you split one. And then we farm those isotopes, but they all have a half-life. So some go for 3 days, some go for a year. And nuclear iodine is one that we use quite a bit of, but that isotope factory will be able to build in 2 hours what GE builds in a week. Now, when we went to war, Russia and cut off theirs, we lost half our isotopes because that's where they were set up, was in Russia, around their nuclear plants. And America has struggled to get back into the medical isotope. But Utah will become a leader, and I'm devoting a lot of my time to this venture called Nusano to build it. We moved it from Valencia, California, the headquarters. We built an engineering building for 60,000 feet. We built a 160,000 factory. Now we're building the largest medical storage for medicine in the western United States, 30,000 square feet, and we're 10 minutes from the Salt Lake Airport. So when we manufacture a drug at 2 o'clock, sometimes it's on the airplane at 4, and it's in surgery at 8.
Oh, wow.
That's how this works. So meaning we're creating ice cubes that need to be made and put to work before they half-life out, because you don't want something in there for 2 weeks. You want it in there for 5 days. And that constant little reactor isotope, before it burns out, kills the cancerous pod in the prostate. And the molecule attaches. So you put a molecule with that little nuclear reactor, and it goes, where's the cancer? Where's the cancer? And it attaches to them, and then the little nuclear reactor kills it.
Wow.
It's the most amazing thing. So when you talk retirement, I get to work with nuclear medicine. And I sit with guys that are like I'm at Los Alamos talking about this.
Yeah.
So I have a very privileged life that I get to participate in these earth-changing things that will benefit humanity. And there are so many of them in the Wasatch Group. We picked particularly things that we think move the needle towards a better, safer, kinder world. And that is the compass that we try to drive at Wasatch. How do we help low-income people? How do we help the elderly? How do we make our rental units friendly even when people lose their jobs? How do we help? We built a 160-unit homeless shelter at the Airport Inn with Switchpoint from St. George, donated $8 million and moved them in before Thanksgiving. So how can I help the homeless here? How can I help education? And we're always asking, how can I help? And how can I help without judgment? So when people ask me what my religion is, I says, well, I have one simple one. I get to help, God gets to judge. I don't get to judge them, other than sometimes, Orange Jesus, I do become a little judgmental. But I repent for that, and anyone I've offended, I need to repent, because my overwhelming anxiety has overcome my desire to be forgiving and let God do all the judgment, let me do all the helping. And I don't need to judge people, I just need to help. And they can be different from me. They can, other than, gosh, that's hard to say that about Trump. That taxes my whole premise. But I do need to be kind, and in my family, they're half and half. So I have to forgive them every day in my heart, every day.
How do you think about how Utah's grown in your lifetime and just the rapid growth of this state?
Amazing.
And what do you think it'll look like 20, 30 years from now?
Well, I'm a Utah native, always lived here. I was born in Sevier County, Salina, and my grandparents were in Redmond, so I always had a deep southern Utah base. Then my dad worked for the government, so I lived in Dugway, Tremonton, Randolph, Smithfield. So he was with the Department of Agriculture, so I saw all the big hamlets in Utah, and they were small cities. Smithfield had 4 wards when I grew up. Now it's got 30. I spent most of my life in North Logan, and then really came towards Salt Lake about 20 years ago. And I go to Logan usually every Monday. I transferred it this week, but I'll go tomorrow. So I work with the team in Logan, and I work here at the Wells Fargo Center, through Thursday. And then I try to travel to projects we have in Hawaii, Texas, California. We're building 2 large communities in Hawaii and 1 very large one in Texas with 3,000 homes down there. So meaning we have a lot of very large things that we're doing. That's my Fridays. But looking at Utah's growth, we were on a wrong path for quite a while, meaning chewing up farmland with a lot of single-family homes and not organized communities. I now see the population will double in the next 20 years. I mean, it's mathematically going to be difficult to see how we don't get by 2045 a doubling of our 3.5 million to 7 million. I do think that with really good planning, we're now learning how to aggregate our housing better and leave more open space. So in all of our planning, we tend to work on our open space more than that. Before, we carved up a piece of land and put a 12,000 square foot or 14,000 square foot lot and home, and didn't have a lot of open space. We just had a lot of lots. The planning now is better, that we're watching our open space, parks, nature, how we access our natural mountains and deserts. I wish you could say that we could grow slower. I wish. But Utah is attractive. It's got a safe lifestyle. It's got a committed people. We have something that's very attractive in the mountains, the desert, the south, the north. We have an amazingly attractive state, and a homogeneous thought process to a large degree of respecting each other, meaning the culture was, we were a thrown out people. We were the throwaways of society in the 1800s. And hopefully we don't forget that we were the rejected immigrants and hated immigrants when we came to Utah. And we built a caring society that has built Utah to what it is, that you can come here and be free and loved and not judged. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. We got to be careful not to lose it. But I do think I'm seeing a lot of positive signs of good planning. You know, I would like to have fewer people on the freeways, but it seems like the internet and work from home has made the freeways easiest to drive on in 20 years.
Yeah.
I drive on the freeway, and I don't expect to get blocked in Utah County coming to a BYU game for 4 hours anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I remember 5 years ago, it was a horror story before COVID. And then COVID came, we worked from home more, and all of a sudden the roads seemed to be clearer. So maybe there will be some innovation that we will use less dirty vehicles and things like that. I have one last one.
Yeah.
I built a trash company starting 25 years ago in Sacramento because I wanted to save money, but I wanted to get rid of diesel trucks. I've always believed in that. We now have 120 trucks in Sacramento, and all of them are on biofuel and methane. I took out of the air, which if you saw a pile of the soot that the trucks we had would have created, it was 300 feet tall, coned, that we took out of the Sacramento skies. We opened our trash company in Utah 2 years ago called Atlas Disposal, and it's out on the I-80. And we bought a company here a year ago that had 35 old diesel trucks. I can say by November this year, all 35 are gone, and our 25 will have 50, 60 trucks burning biofuel methane. So we take biofuels and we put in. Now, I had a methane plant in Sacramento that I did with UC Davis, where they spent $5 million build a food conversion. So we took the food waste, they converted it. 28 days later, it was methane. We stored it and scrubbed it, spent $1.5 million. And for 2 years, until UC Davis ran out of funding, I used straight methane. Now I use about half methane, and I capture it off the trash dumps. But I'm committed to burning methane, which is 5 times more toxic if it's released in the atmosphere. It's shorter life than carbon. But if I can capture it and burn it, it's virtually water. I mean, I can take a toxic methane, burn it, and the pollution is virtually nominal. So I'm now committed to having 200 trucks at the end of next year, 5% being diesel, because my partners are dying to retire good trucks that are still pulling some diesel. But eventually we won't have any diesel. We'll move to electric, then we'll move to hydrogen. So we already have a 20-year plan to go from biofuel, some pollution, but very low, hydrogen, very, very low, and electric in the middle, you know. But we're committed to driving around Utah on those 50 trucks for 9 hours every day. And instead of polluting like 100 cars worth, that disappears.
That's
so
awesome.
I believe in conservation. I'm not a great environmentalist, but a huge conservationist. Built a water metering company that we sold to Blackstone that has now 8 million customers. We build the meters in Singapore. So 80% of the water meters in multifamily housing we built under a company called Next Century. And what gets metered gets watched. And I want to save water. So every apartment we build in Utah, we put the meters in. And when people see that they get a bill for their water, they use less. And so 40% of our housing's apartments, that's a way to save water. So I believe in conservation. These are all scarce resources. Our air is scarce, our water is scarce, our land is scarce. We need to plan that we don't use up our farmland. We don't waste our water. We use electricity, you know, that it's solar. We built the first virtual power plant in America in Harriman, Utah, 600 units with 10 megawatts of solar, 12 megawatts of battery, and we didn't even put a gas line into the property. So everything is 100% electric. There is nothing gas, not the heating. We had to over-insulate, but we built the first, and we sell power to Rocky Mountain Power every day from our batteries, and they use it to balance the grid. Instead of firing up the generators out there on North Temple, they don't have to fire those up and pollute the center of Salt Lake. They can pull from our batteries that we have in Harriman. And so that's where they started their whole Rocky Mountain Power solar battery program is from us. And they tell us, thank you for winning over Warren Buffett to believe that solar and battery can be good for a utility. It took 2 years, but they did it. And now they're all in. So we take a little pride in the fact that we spent every Wednesday meeting with Rocky Mountain Power to design a system that both helped the utility and, the environment. So I'm very conservation committed, both electrical, trash, water. I don't wake up that I don't think those things are important.
Yeah. It sounds like you're being real selfish sleeping 5 hours a day.
Well, my
sounds like you
wife
should be
thinks I should
sleeping about
sleep
1.
more, but I wake up and as soon as I'm awake, I want to go to work. I want to work on something. I want to go for a walk with Red. You got my dog under your feet there, and he and I go everywhere. I've never known what a great companion a dog could be. And
best.
Red is, I pat my thing and he comes up. My wife's away having our grandchild in Wisconsin. And so it should come today, and she'll be there for a week. So Red comes up where she sleeps. If I pat the bed twice, he'll come up on the bed. I said, thanks, Red, because I'm missing Julie, so you come and take care of me. And he's right there. But I want to tell you guys thank you. I try to stay out of the spotlight as much as I can. I don't enjoy it. It's not something, when I was in soccer, I was not the logical guy to head a soccer team. I cared more about the kids and things like that, and I really didn't like working with agents and privileged players. It was not my cup of tea. Anyone who wants a really unfun time, meet with 20 professional soccer teams, agents, and you will not enjoy your life. I mean, it is just brutal negotiation all the time, and there's nothing fun in it. Yeah. So I was a poor leader, and I concede that. I was not sexist. I was not racist, but I was not the best leader because I didn't enjoy it. And I'm grateful that in the purchase of the company, I've been able to redeploy those resources into the community, into Ukraine. And I personally think God punished me a little for not making my own decision and said, now I want you to take that money and put it to work in a positive way. So I'm grateful in the buyout that I've been able to take that money. I don't need another pair of pants. I don't need a car. I don't need anything. I was able to take that money and think, what greater good can I bring with this? And I don't need it because someone calls me up and says, thank you. I don't want that. Like I've told everyone, if I needed you to thank me for something I thought was right and I did, then I only look at myself and say, why do I need that? What am I lacking that I need your thank you? So I go to great lengths, honestly, to not do that. Even accepting this is the first interview I've taken since the Deseret News pleaded with me for a year. And I said, look, no good deed will go unpunished here. If I take the time to read the comments, half the people will say, why is he not helping America? The other half will say, well, he just wants the glory. So I said, it's a sum-zero game to come into it, and I would much rather just simply go out and do good as God gives me the light to see and know internally that's what matters. I want no recognition. It comes with pain. You don't need it. It doesn't serve any good that some stranger compliments me. I don't know what that means. I don't need it. I want the respect of my family. I want the respect of my associates, that they know I'm trying as best I can as a flawed human being to do the ultimate good, but I'm not doing it that you tell me I'm okay. I have to know I'm okay. And if I don't, no amount of applause from the internet is going to make me okay. And I think if our children learn, the internet does not create who you are. It does not reward your greater self. You have to know that and say, if I need your approval, I need to seek deeper why I am fundamentally good and God's child, or someone that is of value without the internet accolade or the greater chorus of public opinion. And I've spent my life thinking I want to do this for the right reason. And if I need your approval and your accolade, I already know if I need that, then I'm going down the wrong path and I better not do it. So thank you for the chance to say this, but I was a very reluctant convert to this, as C.S. Lewis would say. An amazing person I study profoundly.
Oh, he's incredible.
He is amazing. And I found how to be a reluctant believer in a greater power through C.S. Lewis, because before it was hard. I couldn't absolutely say I know things. I believe things, I hope things, but I don't know that I know much. And C.S. Lewis gave me the chance to feel joy, his concept of joy, by the suffering. And I tell people in Ukraine, I'm doing this for me. It is selfish, because by enduring your pain with you and seeing the joy of your safety and the belief in a greater hope together, I find something called joy, and that's selfish. And I've told many Ukrainian, I said, I'm grateful I can help you, but you have to know you're helping me. You're bringing me to a state of joy. And that's hard to describe if you haven't felt it, because I couldn't tell you what it is, but I can tell you when I feel it. And when I'm with someone crying and then feeling their comfort and safety, and that they know that we love each other unconditionally, something happens called joy. And it's like its own nuclear explosion. And only you know it. You can't tell somebody what it is. They have to find it. Yeah. And that is the mission in my life at a personal level, is to find joy. And to find it serving others and experiencing their pain and their hopes. And I found that combination is very powerful, that exposing myself to their pain and their hopes, I find joy and an amazing outcome.
Dell Loy, thank you for coming on here, talking to us. Thank you for everything you've done for the state of Utah. It means the world to us that we would be your interviewer. You came here. That was remarkable. Again, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Thank you. You're an amazing force for good. Silicon Slopes, I brag about all the time. I said, I went with Levitt to Silicon Valley to try to recruit .com here. Now they try to recruit us there.
That's right.
So it's been a complete flip. But I've been part of this movement for 25 years.
Oh, yeah.
And very profound when Micron was coming, when the early tech companies were coming, and Governor Levitt was championing that. He and I worked on that. I flew him out to Silicon Valley 10 times, and we went and met with Silicon Valley Bank and all the tech companies. So I was an early proponent of Utah becoming a tech hub, and you guys have carried it to the next level. So thank you for taking the baton.
We owe you. We owe Governor Levitt. Man, we're standing on the backs of giants. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.